Okay, real quick, tech check. Can you guys hear us? See us? Yup. All right, awesome. How about that opening with Vanilla Precise, aka our very own Casey? Did y'all have fun? That was fun. That was a really good time. He brings a lot of great energy to the team, and I'm still so impressed that they were able. Like, we literally he's like, I can make this a rap video. Didn't hear about it for a whole month, and he's like, here's the video. And I don't know if you guys have seen the video on YouTube, but it is amazing. It's like top quality production. Still don't know how he pulled it off. It's amazing. So go check it out if you haven't seen it on YouTube. If you like the live performance, the YouTube video or the whole music video is just very, very impressive. So go check it out. I'm glad you guys enjoyed that. Remember, let's keep bringing the energy. Day 2, let's carry it on through the rest of the conference. But welcome to today's first session. I am personally very excited about this session because I myself have struggled with ADHD. And we've got a lot of really great accountants that have ADHD to talk about ADHD in accounting. This kind of originated from a few articles we wrote over the last few months. There was a lot of buzz, there's a lot of excitement, a lot of conversations about it. So we wanted to bring people on just to go deeper on this topic. And I want to mention, even if you don't have ADHD, I think this is going to be a really exciting conversation because we're going to be talking a lot about productivity and focus. And these are all things that are relatable and transferable to anyone. So you're going to pick up a lot of really good tips and insights in this panel discussion today. So with that, let me introduce our panelists. So first up, I want to introduce Blake Oliver, CPA. He's the founder and CEO of Earmark. It's an app that offers CPA credits for listening to your favorite accounting and tax podcasts. If you haven't checked out Earmark, I definitely recommend you check it out. It's really cool. If you don't like sitting through the actual webinars, just being able to listen to podcasts and pick up CPA credits is amazing. And he's also the co-host of the Accounting Podcast, which is a top 25 business news show on the Apple charts and the most popular podcast for accountants and bookkeepers worldwide. He was named Accounting Today's top 100 most influential people and recognized as one of CPA practice advisors 40 under 40 in the accounting profession. Blake lives in Scottsdale, Arizona, where he enjoys hiking, swimming, and cycling. Blake, excited to have you on.
Thank you, Shahram. Great to be here.
Yeah, definitely. So next, our next panelist is Sabrina Parris, CPA. She is the founder and president of Honeycomb State Tax Strategies, based in North Carolina, and it assists other CPAs, EAs, and tax professionals in navigating the choppy waters of state and local taxes. She has over 18 years of public accounting experience, including time at the Big Four, and she focuses her time staying current on state and local tax updates. Sabrina, welcome to the panel.
Thanks for having me.
No problem. Okay, and our last panelist is Linda Lee Hahn. She's a partner at Olson Hahn Accounting. She previously owned her own accounting firm, accounting and bookkeeping company. Prior to that, she worked in corporate accounting for 11 years in other industries. Linda Lee believes in profit-first philosophy, as well as empowering business owners to understand their numbers. In 2023, she was nominated for the Woman Nation Education and Membership Award. This award features women who inspire others with their passion of personal growth and lifelong learning. In her spare time, she enjoys CrossFit, snowboarding, camping, and spending time with her friends and family. Welcome, Linda.
Thank you.
Okay, so really excited to jump into this topic with all of you today. But to start off, I think it'd be really exciting to really talk about when you were first diagnosed with ADHD. Like, when did you find out about that and kind of how you felt about that? And we can start with you, Blake.
So I discovered this very late in life, basically this year. I was at dinner with my parents and I was telling them that I'd started getting these ADHD influencer videos in my TikTok feed. And I was saying, this sounds like so familiar to me. This sounds like me. And my mom just offhand remarks, oh yeah, that's because you have it. And I say, what? And apparently, I was having trouble in school when I was about 10 years old. And my parents took me to a child psychologist who evaluated me and determined that I should change schools to go into a gifted and talented program. And it also told my parents, he might have ADHD or ADD, whatever they were calling it at the time. And my parents just basically decided, well, we don't need to tell him that. We'll just see if this, new school works. And then, it was different times, right? Like you didn't want your kid to have a diagnosis. And so they just never told me. And luckily the new school kind of helped because I was more interested, it was more challenging. And so it helped my ADHD brain. But yeah, I didn't know that I had it. And I just got a new diagnosis. I went to see somebody and they're like, oh yeah, this sounds like ADHD. And so, I'm trying some medication, just going to see if it helps. Like, it's funny though, all those years of like struggling with it. I'm not going to say like, it wasn't, I don't know, struggle can be a good thing, but I think also it can be like unnecessarily challenging. So I'm glad to know. I feel like it's going to help me going forward.
Do you wish you would have found out sooner, or are you kind of glad you found out a little later in life?
I think it would have helped to know sooner, but also at the time, I don't know if like, the schools were not making accommodations for kids at that time. So like, what would have been the, help? Like, would it have helped? I don't know. I can't go back 20, 30 years and say that. So I don't know. I'm excited about, the next 20 years.
Yeah. Wow. That's awesome. Okay. Sabrina, how about you? When did you first find out that you were diagnosed, or when you first diagnosed with ADHD or ADD?
Yeah, so similarly, it was later in life. I am 41 currently. I think I was 34 when I was diagnosed. My sister, who's 4 years younger than me, she and I had the same doctor, and my sister was diagnosed. And the thing she was telling me, well, first, I was super surprised to hear that my sister had ADHD. And then, I would tell her about struggles I was having at work, in life, just staying organized. And she's like, Sabrina, go get tested. And so I told the doctor, I was like, I know you see my sister and I know you can't talk about my sister, but I just wanted to let you know, she and I have been talking about things going on in my life. I'm seeing a lot of parallels. Can I be tested for ADHD? And the doctor already kind of, she was like, yeah, let's definitely go that route. It's a pretty simple test. It's very like self-reporting about, the things that you experience, and the key factor is whether it's negatively impacting your life in certain ways. And so we did the test and found out, and it was just really it was good to have answers, but it was also kind of scary. Like, what does this mean next? Like, what are the next steps? What do we do next? So that was how I found out.
Wow, very interesting. So both of you found out a little later in life. Linda, how about you?
I found out about 10 years ago. I was dating somebody at the time who had it, and I was starting to realize like, oh, we have some similarities. And I got tested, and I swear the testing anybody would show they had ADHD. It's the weirdest test, and you have to pay attention for a long period of time. And so just knowing that, I know I didn't have typical symptoms. So I'm not the hyperactive type. I'm the combo med, it's called. And so I don't have stereotypical jump off the walls, run around type like we saw as kids and boys were seeing. So I never would have thought that I had it. But now that I do, it's much easier to find strategies and understand and be okay with things that come up. So I'm glad I got it actually officially diagnosed. But yeah.
Awesome. I also want to remind everyone, if you guys have questions that you want us to ask up here, we want to make this a conversation. So don't be afraid to drop them in the Q&A. We'll try to cover them throughout these discussions. Before we jump into some of the questions that some people have, I'm curious, accounting, ADD, ADHD, like I could definitely see some conflict there. What was it like? And we'll start with you, Linda. Like, what was it like for you having ADHD in the accounting field?
I job hopped a lot, so I only stayed at a job for max 2 years. I had issues with management, so I usually did really good at my job for a task, and then I'd really like to delegate it. Like I got this already. Like I want to move on and do something different, but of course, when that's your role, that's what you're supposed to be doing. I even took a personality test and it said that exact thing, likes to conquer the task and delegate. And I wasn't in a role that I could delegate. So it was very conflicting. And I was like, well, this can't look good to the manager that I have at the time. And I had really great experience with the different industries that I worked in, and I really enjoyed it. But finally, 6 years ago, I finally just was like, you know what, I had a toxic manager that really didn't work with my ADHD. And so I jumped and started my own bookkeeping firm at the time, and I've never looked back.
I feel like I can relate to that. Like I've always struggled with that as well. And I feel like I see a lot of people with ADD and ADHD always going off. They're like entrepreneurs, right? They like to go and start their own business. They like to have control of their destiny. And I think we'll talk about like the creativity that comes with it. And if you're doing something you love, like the hyper focus, it's kind of like a perfect role for someone that has ADHD, being able to like go in and start their own thing and build their own thing the way they want to build it.
Yeah, I totally have felt that, Linda. Like you figure out how to do something, and that's really fun and fascinating. But then like you don't want to do it over and over again. That's the really boring part that I struggle with. And so like if you aren't in that place where you can then hand it off to somebody as the manager or the business owner, you're stuck doing that thing over and over again. And that's not fun. So I did the same thing. I job hopped a lot, like every couple of years.
Yeah, this is the first time I'm meeting Linda, but I know a little bit about Blake, and I feel like there's definitely a pattern here, right? Like we're much more designed for the entrepreneurial lifestyle, and we want to have our hands in a lot of different projects. And once the novelty of something wears off, we're ready to start something new. I know that looking back, when I got diagnosed, I started thinking about how on earth did I pass the CPA exam? Like that was just such a struggle. I had to like delete my social media accounts. I had this like rigid schedule I followed. I just had to be like hyper focused. And I think of how much easier it would have been if I had had a diagnosis, but that's in the past. But my first job was in the Big Four, and it wasn't for me. If I'd had somebody there who could kind of like help me stay on task and focus, great. But there was a lot of butting heads. Just my head's just in the cloud, like wandering. It was really hard to stay focused. And once I got my diagnosis, that's when I started setting the wheels in motion to create something that worked for me.
Sabrina, I'm curious, like when you were at the big firm, did you struggle to stay in your cubicle? Because when I went to a large firm and we had, the hermetically sealed office where I couldn't like leave, that like to me, I have to move around and I have to be in different places throughout the day working. So, take my laptop and go to a cafe. And yeah, I just could not stay in that building. It was really a struggle.
Yeah, not only did I have trouble staying in my cube, I was frequently getting called into HR's office over just really silly things. Just like one of my coworkers and I had this like prank war, and we were called into HR's office over it, and just like goofy stuff like that. And it's just like I kept thinking, I didn't want to talk back to people that had control over my career, but I'm just thinking like, look, I can have fun at work and still be really good at my job. Like, why are we even having this conversation? But I mean, in hindsight, it was distracting to others. But yeah, I could not just stay in my cube and nose to the ground.
Yeah, that's very interesting because like for me, I felt the same thing. So like I have a office. Well, I have like it's like a remote office, like a WeWork style place where I work from here. And you have the option to get your own office where you can have your own stuff. But I actually choose to do like the community pass where I can just float around the building and sit in all these different call booths because I can't be caged. I go crazy if I just sit in the same place for long periods of time.
That's
And
a
that's
good point.
go for it,
Go
Sabrina.
ahead. Well, yeah, I was just thinking, like, now that I don't have employees anymore, I recently got new office space, and I went back and forth about doing, something kind of like what you're in, sort of like a WeWork situation, a co-working space. And honestly, I think that would be more conducive to me. But yeah, I think that's, a good ADHD hack is if you have the ability to work in a space like that, that's probably a pretty good thing.
Yeah, definitely. So I've got a question. I think that's gonna a lot of people are coming up with is accounting. Like you have to be long hours of focus and attention to detail, which is kind of the opposite of what you get when you have ADD or ADHD. So, what are some ways, and we can start with you, Blake, that you've overcome that, right? Like, how do you manage that in a field where you need focus, you need attention to detail, but the ADHD is kind of working against that?
So I like to think of it as it's actually a superpower, but it has its disadvantages. Like it's like Superman with his kryptonite. So the superpower part of an ADHD diagnosis is the hyper focus. So when you are focused and you have this, you can be hyper focused, which means you can really dig into the nitty gritty of something. Like if I am focused on working on like writing a script or something like that for my current company, I will lose. I'll forget the outside world. I almost missed this session this morning, Shahram, because I was so in focused working on something. I looked up and I'm like, oh crap, it's 8 minutes. I better go upstairs, right? And I miss meetings. This is not like that happens a lot. So I have to have like a billion notifications, right? I got my Apple Watch notifying me. I've got my computer notifying me, so I don't miss it. But so that's really actually powerful because you can get stuff done. And you can be more effective probably than somebody with like a typical brain. The part that is your kryptonite is the attention deficit part, which is that when things do distract you, like that's a lot easier. It's very easy for that hyper focus to get lost. And so I have had to learn how to design like a work environment where I have few distractions. And that means getting rid of those social media notifications from your phone, like turning off all the push notifications for anything that is not absolutely essential, utilizing do not disturb, creating like a space where you can go and your family knows that they're not going to come in and bother you because you got to focus, that sort of thing. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's like just one of the strategies I use. And then the other is, and this is probably the most important one, is that like if I know, like my brain constantly wants to jump to other things. Like there's this urge to like get up from what I'm doing because I just had this thought about something that's related, but not the thing I'm doing. And the way that I can control that is if I give myself a time box for the thing I'm doing. So say I'm going to focus on this thing for 20 minutes and then I can go and let my brain go, right? I'm going to put it in the cage or the cube or whatever it is for that short time. And then that helps. And that's how Sabrina, I was able to do the CPA exam. I never would have been able to do it otherwise. Is I would like use the Pomodoro technique and do like 20 minutes, set a timer and say, I'm going to get through this part of the guide and then take a break and then do 20 minutes.
The Pomodoro method's probably one of my favorite hacks, my most often used hack. And if you're not familiar with the Pomodoro method, it's kind of analogous to making Pomodoro sauce, but you set a 25-minute timer, or it doesn't have to be 25, but it can be 20, 50 if you want a big block of time. But you set a 25-minute timer, work 25 minutes straight, no distractions. And then when the timer goes off, you can take a 5 or 10-minute break and do other things. And honestly, like that is I use that so often if I need to finish a big chunk of work.
Yeah. If I had to if it was too long, if it's more than 50 minutes is probably the most I could ever do. And that's a stretch. And so that's why the idea of going into an office and sitting there for until lunch, and focusing that long, I can't, that's too long. That doesn't work for me.
Yeah,
Linda, what works for you? Yes, I have that thing.
I need to get one of those. That's so cool. So you just put it down on that time and it just starts the timer.
Yeah, and it was super cheap. It was probably like $3, and with Team
that's
Music,
awesome. I'm ordering one right now. This is Amazon.
Yeah, get on Amazon.
Okay.
Yeah. So the Pomodoro technique works really well for me, but previously when I had types of tasks that I didn't enjoy, that were harder for me to concentrate, I really had to become more self-aware of, oh, I'm procrastinating, oh, I'm distracting, right? Like I'm moving off task, and just being more self-aware that it's happening. And sometimes I would guilt myself, like, I need to finish this, like, why can't I focus, and that didn't work. So really just taking the time. What's working for me now is like walking away, not grabbing my phone though, like grabbing a drink, or just kind of being okay with taking a 5-minute break if I'm not using the Pomodoro technique, or if I am, and just kind of taking a step back and realizing, like, am I stuck, or am I just procrastinating and wanting to do a different task, and just like having that urge. So the self-awareness is really starting to become key as to like, what am I feeling and what's going on here. So
Yeah, I also have to say the do not disturb. I've recently started doing that over the last year, and it's been game changing for me. Now, my team, they hate it, right? Because they hate to call me twice. Because I just leave my phone permanently on do not disturb. It's never not on do not disturb. But I turned off all my social media notifications, so I don't get any social media notifications on my phone. I turned off all my email notifications too, because it's easy. Just, oh, I can answer this now, right? Why not? And then it just interrupts your flow, and it takes a lot of people, they say it takes about 15 minutes to get back into focus. So we're like creating like distractions, like the biggest kryptonite, I feel like, for ADHD. And you need to create a distraction-free environment, whether it's do not disturb. Like in college, I used to just put my phone in my backpack, right? And I would find a nook in the library where no one could find me. I put on my headphones, and I'm just like wired in, like, because from the outside world.
Music is a great strategy too. Like I like to put on EDM, so there's no lyrics. It's just the beat, and that like gets my brain into this focus mode. Yeah. And go for it.
Go ahead. I lost it. It was something he said that triggered something, but go ahead.
I know that's the problem with it, right? Is like now my ideas are gone. I have to have a notepad with me, so I write down everything. Reminders, right? Like I'm constantly forgetting things that my wife told me. And honestly, the best part about this diagnosis is now that she's like, she instead of getting mad at me about it, she's like, oh, okay, I get it. That's a medical condition, right? So not that I'm making excuses like that, but I'm trying really hard. But what I do is I have to put everything down in my calendar, or it's gone. Right. So we have like come up with that solution where if something is happening, I ask, okay, thank you for telling me, is it in our shared calendar? And we have a shared Google Calendar. And if it is, then yes, we're good. Because I live based on that thing, right? It's like,
same.
Yeah.
I remember what it was that Shahram said that made me think of it is when I had employees, I had to figure out another way for my employees to contact me when I had everything on Do Not Disturb. I was like, okay, what is a way that I can make it to where only they can reach me, but nobody else can? And they know that they can only do it if it's like, keeping them from getting something done. And so I set up like a separate Slack channel and turned off alerts on all the other Slack channels. But like, if you needed to get me and you needed my attention, it was time sensitive, you had to go to this one Slack channel where I had alerts still turned on. And that's how you got me.
That's brilliant. That's great.
I like that. I might actually start. They'll like that idea. So I might try to implement that. Linda, you said something too about the procrastination. So that's something I still struggle with, but something I've done that's really helped me. And I think I've heard this, a lot of people just use this in general. It's like, I typically set my top 3 things for the day. And what's worked is those are the first 3 things I knock out. That way, like, it forces myself to get like the hardest, like, especially in the morning. For me in the morning, that's when I'm the most like ready to go, because I get up early, I work out, like the blood's pumping. By the end of the day, I'm more like kind of tired, and like my creativity's not there, my focus isn't there. But that's something that's really helped me. I'm curious if any of you guys have tried this where you like you set your top 3 maybe for the week and then for the day, and then like those are the first things you knocked out. Have you guys had success with that?
I don't have it right now, but it's downstairs and I was using it this morning. I have a notepad and it's just a simple notepad and I write down what are my top 3 to 5 things that day. And if I get to like 2 or 3 of them, that's great, you know, but that's the only way I can keep myself focused. And I look at that physical notepad throughout the day. So, because like you said, Shahram, like it's easier early when your brain is clear. It's almost like you have a fresh blank sheet of paper, but then as the day goes on, all these things keep getting added to it until by the afternoon, like I can't focus on anything because I've got so much written down in my brain. So that pad of paper helps. I think Sam Altman, who runs OpenAI, he uses that method too.
Yeah, especially when your to-do list is never ending. Like I live and die by my to-do list. Like kind of you were talking, like I was just looking at my phone, like I have 4,400 notes on my notepad because everything becomes a note in my life. But like what's nice is once I put it on paper, I can forget about it. I can let it leave my mind. Because if it's not on paper, I know I'm going to forget it. So then I'm always thinking about it. And then like I become stressed out because I'm thinking about 10 different things at once and I can't focus. Like the notepad is just so powerful.
One of my other favorite productivity tools is Getting Things Done by David. I think it's David Allen. You can go find that book, Getting Things Done. And it's a productivity tool where you essentially, the thing that makes it really valuable for people with ADD is you separate the task creation from the task doing. So you have like an inbox system where you take in all the things you might need to do, and then you process it every now and then throughout the day, and you create your task list. And you need to create different times when you're only working on your tasks and you're not letting your inbox fill up more. And so like that means in like your email program, right? Like I've set mine up so that I have an inbox, but it doesn't show me how many are unread. And then I go into the folder where here's the emails I need to actually work on, right? And so I'm not constantly distracted by the incoming ones. So like I like breaking it up that way.
Very interesting.
I like to time block. So my top things that I'm working on today, I'll put like 2 to 3 hours. Today I'm going to be working on this tax return or this file and making sure that that's time blocked in my calendar. So I make sure it's getting done. And so then I have several of them in my calendar. I make sure to put extra time than I might take because it usually takes longer than I expect to. And I don't want to feel bad that I'm cramming into the next one. But I also write it down too. So I kind of like, I'm okay with having it here and here, just so that I can visually remind myself that that's what I promised myself I'm working on. But that's another thing is I'm working on keeping the promises that I make to myself. And so then it helps me become more confident in what I'm doing and confident that I'm going to get it done because yes, I said I would get it. And sometimes it even helps to say like, here to my team or hey to that client. Yeah, I'll have it done by 4 p.m. on Friday. Okay, well, I told them 4 p.m. I better get it done, right? So I'm like keeping myself accountable to that as well.
I'm always overestimating how much I can get done. So the time blocking on the calendar is good.
Mm-hmm.
I wish there's some programs that will like, I've seen some that will take tasks and like automatically time block them onto your calendar. And I tried one, could never get it really to like work perfectly. I would love to find that.
Same. I played around with one of them and it wasn't for me. It almost had too many features. It was almost doing too much. I've been playing around with Microsoft Planner. And so if an email comes in that has an action item, I can create an action item from the email and it'll put it in Teams as a to-do. And then the other thing that I've done, I haven't done a whole lot with automations, but this was my first automation. I was really proud of it. So I use the Fathom note taker for meetings. And I know there's so many different note takers. The reason I like Fathom is because in the summary, it'll show a to-do list and like what person on the call has to do each item. And so I set up an automation to where the things that are my to-do lists, it automatically creates a task in Outlook and then sets a due date on the task. And then I have it like right there with all my other stuff that I'm doing.
That's brilliant. The AI note taker apps are amazing for me.
Such a game changer.
You know what's hilarious is like I started using them and I started reading the notes after the meetings, and I realized like, oh, I'm missing a lot of what's going on in these meetings. Like I didn't realize how much I was missing in the team meetings.
Yeah.
That was
my biggest problem was once the meeting was over, I like put it out of my mind.
Yes.
So all the things I agreed to do during the meeting, I'm like, wait, what did I say I was going to do? It's gone. Like once the meeting's over, it's no longer in my brain.
Are you using Zapier to do that?
Yeah.
So
I'll show you.
I have never, and I'd be happy to share this too with folks who are interested, but like I don't like any of the built-in summaries of the meeting notes. Like they're just not good enough. So what I did is I hooked up, I use Fireflies, joins all my meetings, fireflies.ai. And then I have a Zap that sends the transcript to Claude 3.5 with a custom prompt that I've written that I really like that generates the meeting notes and then emails them to me after the meeting. So like I'm getting the like the best, and it's like I would say 98% accurate, right? It's like so accurate that I can rely on it. And it's great because all the stuff that I missed because I was distracted during the meeting, I get the action items. But there's one thing I was going to add about the task management problem. The thing for me that like every task management system I've ever tried, I've ended up failing to use because inevitably, like you said, Shahram, there's an infinite number of things to do. Or you said something like that, right? Like if you're an entrepreneur, there's always like you can never do it all. So you end up with this list of like an insane amount of things. And then that just becomes completely overwhelming. So I always end up going back to the notepad because if something's truly important, it gets on the notepad. And if it's not truly urgent or important, it doesn't, right? And then, otherwise, like with an electronic system, like I'll end up with like 200 to-dos and I just want to like quit.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing for me was like accepting that it's okay not to get everything done, right? If you try to manage it all, you're going to burn yourself out. You're going to be stressed out. Like if it's truly important, like you said, it's going to come back to the top of the list. And 90% of the time, it never comes back, and it either solves itself or it wasn't really important enough to get done. It's like, and that's like the thing with the top 3. It's like, focus on the top 3 things that are going to move the needle for you, whether it's in your business or in your day. And if you keep doing that every day, you're going to always make progress. But if you're doing all these little things that are distracting you, it actually slows your progress even more. So like that focus and that prioritization is so important for anyone, right? So I do have a question here I do want to bring up though. So I think this is interesting, and Sabrina it kind of in some ways reminds me of the thing you were talking about where you created this channel for your team. Someone asked, said, my boss has ADHD. What are some tips to help keep her on track? I think you got to be careful, right? It's managing up a little bit. What are some tips you'd give people listening in? Like, if they realize their boss has ADHD, what can I do to help them but not push them at the same time?
Yeah, I feel like I had a staff person who was really good at this. She'd play it in a way that it was like to help her, like that she needed my help, but really what she was doing or what she was accomplishing by doing that was she would take a lot of things off my plate. And so if it comes off my plate and goes onto her plate, I can forget about it and feel good about that. And so really I would say, going to your boss and saying, hey, we're working on this project. Which of these tasks, like, let's delegate some of these tasks to me. And that's just a good practice for any, like, if you're a staff or a senior, that's just such a good practice to like go to the manager and partner and just say like, let me take things off your to-do list so that you don't have to worry about them.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. We use Financial Sense. And so our Monday morning meetings, we kind of go through like, okay, this is your task list. These are the things that you're working on this week. How are they going? What's going on with them? And at the end, what I've been trying to work on is doing my list too. And sometimes it's just like a forever scroll, like it just keeps going. But there's also times where my team's like, hey, I could help with that, or I could help you with that, or if you teach me this or whatever. So that's when they also raise their hand to say, like, that's an easy one. Why are you doing that? That's fine. But I also, so it keeps me accountable to keep using the program too, because like we talked about earlier, I don't stick to the same task management software either. Like I hop, but at least this one, I'm keeping my team accountable, which also keeps me accountable. And then I write it down too, because I know that I need it in 2 different places. And then I also tell my team when I delegate them a task, please put this in there. Like I didn't put it in there, so you need to, so that, you know, we're all on the same page that it needs to be done too.
I have a really great operations manager who understands my my tendency to go off track, and she's fantastic at keeping on task. And so she runs the list of things that absolutely have to get done that day and is relentless about reminding me of those things. And I tell the whole team, look, if you're not getting what you need from me, it's up to you to keep reminding me, and I'm not going to get upset about that. Don't feel like you're bugging me. Like, please use those channels. Text me if it's urgent. And you know, also go to Deborah if you don't get what you need from me, because she'll ensure that you get what you need, right? So I think just being like open with people, explaining, like, that can be challenging too, because people don't want to feel like they're bugging you, right? As like, you don't want to be bugging your boss and all that. So I have to make remind people that it's okay and that it's necessary.
Okay. So we've talked a lot about, tips for managing, your focus, your time, your productivity. We talked to like managing up, like if you have work with the boss. But let's talk about the staff a little bit. So there's another good question I'm gonna put on stage real quick. So how do you identify, like, what are some signs you would look for to see if anyone in your staff has ADHD? Because not everyone may want to share that, right? And then if so, like, how can you support them? Like, what are some tips to support your team to help them, give them a better environment?
Well, if you're like anything, like if they're anything like me, right? Like it was obvious, like from when I was in kindergarten in a way, because I was the kid who couldn't sit in the front. I had to sit in the back so that I could get up and kind of wander around a little bit. And luckily I had a kindergarten teacher who understood that, right? And let me do that and didn't punish me for it. So, I mean, just going back to this idea of sitting in the cubicle, if you've got a staff person in your firm who is constantly getting up and moving around, that's not necessarily a sign of like lack of work ethic. It's potentially a sign of like ADD, right? And so let them do that. Let people work anytime, anywhere, and don't evaluate them based on the hours they're billing. Evaluate them based on the work they accomplish. And like, this is what I've always struggled with, I think, with hourly billing in the accounting profession, is that ADHD people, because of the hyper focus, we can get more done than a neurotypical person in a few hours because of that. And yet we're still expected to sit there in that office for 8 hours a day or more, right? It's just completely unfair. And so we leave, we quit, because we're like, this doesn't make sense. This is not right. And so like designing systems that reward outputs, giving people tools so they can automate the boring parts of their jobs, I think is really important. Like I say that the reason my firm was successful, that I started, that I was able to sell it, is not because I knew what I was doing. It's because I had to design all these processes and systems to get the work done, because I was an unreliable employee. So I built a system that could not fail, right? Like we ran payroll, and we had all these alerts and systems to make sure that we would actually do it on time and correctly. And I did that in workflow software. So like workflow software is super critical to like financial sense, right? If you want to make sure the work gets done in your firm, pretend that you have like ADD and design a system for it, because you'll get really high quality work. Does that make sense?
Definitely. I would say two things. One thing would be break things into smaller tasks. So if you've got like a 6 week project that's super intimidating to someone who has trouble focusing, you have to break it down into steps and like deadlines for each step, or like let's put time on the calendar every, if we're going to be working on this 6 weeks, every Wednesday for the next 6 weeks, we're going to sit down for 30 minutes and tackle, where we are with the project and what we need to do next and what you need from other people, and just really break it down like that. The other thing I would say, and this kind of goes along with Blake's point, is that give folks that, people that have trouble doing like the actual like billable work, give them things to do, like, hey, we're really interested in improving this process. Tell us how our firm can do this process better, and let them like go wild with it. Let them research, let them play with tools, let them figure out how to automate it, and they can really bring a lot of value to your team that way. And that's where the whole billable hour model becomes really problematic, right? Because you don't want to punish people that are bringing value to your firm in a different way that's not a billable hour. They're bringing value by, streamlining processes and making everybody else more productive, really like through creative ways that you may not have thought of before.
Put them into like onboarding. That's a great role because it's constantly changing. You're getting new projects, new clients. So don't have them doing the recurring monthly work. And then also sales, like if they've got, a predilection for that, like sales is great for people with ADHD because you're constantly going from meeting to meeting and all sorts of new things happening. So sales or onboarding.
Another thing they might be good at is, and this, I was really good at this, was like training new employees. And then it kind of benefits the new employee and, the senior manager, because they are thinking about the processes they do, and it kind of puts that in the forefront of their mind in addition to helping the new hire.
Yeah, and I think knowing like they don't need a diagnosis, and everybody's different regardless. Like everyone has different productivity and work better in different situations, regardless of if they have ADHD or not. I had one employee where if you told her you only have 1 hour to do this task, she would never get it done within that 1 hour. It just like that number was just way too overwhelming. So if you said you had a limited time or you didn't put time on it, it didn't matter. She got it done. So I just knew like, okay, with that employee, I can't put a cap on the time. Like I just knew with that employee. So managing the team and just getting to know them and what works for them and what doesn't, and constantly checking in a good way, not a micromanaging way, but checking in with like, okay, remember we said that we were going to do this task and where are we at on it, and just keeping that accountability going, and you'll find what works with them and what doesn't, and what kind of lights them up and gets them into hyper focus and what doesn't, and just kind of trying to incorporate a way to make that work in your firm. And sometimes it's not possible. Sometimes there's just no way to make that work perfectly, but that's okay.
Okay. Well, looks like we're at time. Sorry we didn't get to all the questions, but Blake, Linda, Sabrina, thank you so much for coming on and talk about this today. I think there was a lot of really good insights on how you can manage your time or help even other people be more successful in the office. So to wrap up, like if you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out to any of us. I know you can chat with people or send messages to people. So if your question didn't get answered, feel free to chat to any one of us. We can answer them for you. And also, just a reminder, go check out the booths. We've got a lot of great communities you can go talk to. And if you're interested in how you can use Financial Sense, or if you have any interest in Financial Sense for streamlining your processes, we are giving away a special. I think it's 50% for 3 months, 50% off. So go talk to the team and learn how you can take advantage of that. On that note, I'll see you guys in a little bit. I think we're going into the breakout sessions here soon. See you, everyone.
Thank y'all.